take a look at Samuel. So we remember what Moses said that a king would be like. Well, this is what Samuel is telling them that their king is going to be like. And the people said to Samuel, "Behold, you are old, and your sons not walk in the ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." The thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to judge us." Moreover, Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, "Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them." See, the judges was someone that God would pick, not someone that would be, that the people would pick. So now it's going to be up to the people when the king is instituted. Then what we're going to find later on is that the kings end up, once you get to King David, because of his heart, there was never going to be anyone else from another tribe or anything that would sit on the throne in Jerusalem except an heir of David, finally through Jesus. But I digress. Moreover, Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked him a king. And he said, "This will be the manner of king shall reign over you." Now Samuel's laying it out. "He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. Moreover, he will appoint him captains over thousands, captains over 50s, and will set them to the ear his ground, and reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war, and instruments of his chariots. Moreover, he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. Moreover, he will take your fields, and your vineyards, and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. Moreover, he will take 1/10 of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. Moreover, he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses, and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. Moreover, you shall cry out in the day because your king which you shall have chosen, and the Lord will not hear you in that day." Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, "We will have a king over us, that we may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us, and go out before us, and fight our battles." And Samuel heard the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. Moreover, the Lord said to Samuel, "Hearken to their voice, and make them a king." Moreover, Samuel said to the men of Israel, "Go, every man unto his city." The rest is history. Israel/Judah had kings from Saul to Zedekiah when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem, and Israel was held captive for 70 years, as prophesied by Jeremiah and other prophets. When Israel came back to Jerusalem, however, instead of a king, a governor was appointed, and even the governor was subject to the priest. So, the reason why I said that is two things. One of them is what's going on in the world today. United States has an election going on, and one of the things that's always bandied about is this conversation on taxes. They're inescapable. If we want to have a government, then we need to take care of all the things that we need to take care of, somehow it needs to be paid for. But people know as well as I that within the government comes graft. It comes everybody wanting their own piece of the pie. And what it ends up is it gives a wide berth to activities that are not in the best interest of the American public. We also see two different things, two different schools of thought. One, like Joseph, and like the king that would reign over Israel, that the children of Israel wanted, they were going to pay a heavy price for having that king. For Joseph and Egypt, it became completely, the people of Egypt became completely dependent upon the government for everything. Why? They sold themselves out for food. Now, they want to live just like anybody else, but that's what it cost them. It cost them the giving up of their land. It cost them of giving up of themselves. And the other part about it, if you think about it, is the grain that they had grown was what was put in those storehouses, so they sold themselves out for their own food. Something to think about. So that's Joseph. Now, when you get to the kings of Israel, it's the same way. The people were serving the king, and the king was, he'd go out and fight the battles and win the wars or lose the wars. And it was the king's responsibility to pronounce sentence on individuals. However, the priests still remained the most powerful because they're the ones that could forgive sins. They're the ones that that would offer up the offerings to stand in the gap between God and men. So we have two examples of kings that people wanted. And what happened in those governments. Now, if we go back to Moses and what Moses said, the king would be a servant. A king would not feel entitled. A king would be one that would serve the people, not be served by them. So you're starting to get a picture here of, are we going to let the people rule themselves and be servants to the people? Or are we going to take care of everything for the people? It's a difference. It's a socialistic government, so to speak. And with the socialism, the people are basically bringing everything to the government, and the government's going to say, well, we're going to take care of all of this, but it's going to cost you. There might be, well, we're going to raise this tax, and we're going to tax these people, and we're going to have this type of corporate tax, and we hear about a tax for everything, but it still ends up hurting those very people that they're saying they're being helped. And it ends up a vicious cycle that they become completely dependent upon the government. Just like the Egyptians were the Pharaoh, and just like the children of Israel was to their king. And remember, if the king was good, if they followed and worshiped God, then Israel was at peace. But if the king was a bad king and didn't follow and allowed the people to follow strange gods and to build idols and stuff, then it did not bode well for them. So, here's the next point. And this still has something to do with death, taxes, and eternal life. I promise it does. We're going to talk about a king called Rehoboam. Now, Rehoboam was the son of Solomon, who was the son of David. Solomon was the wisest king that ever lived before and ever lived after. However, Solomon's heart, as warned by Moses, he took many wives and concubines, and it says that his heart was led away by these women who worshipped other gods, and he started building altars and stuff for these women to burn incense and to worship their gods. Well, God was displeased with them and said, okay, this is what's going to happen. The kingdom is going to be divided, and the only reason that there's going to be a king in Judah is because that's what I promised David. So while Solomon was also the richest king that ever lived, and he was getting money from everywhere, and his people ate was just, around his table. It talks about what he had per meal. Unbelievable. So eventually, Solomon dies, and they're going to crown Rehoboam. And so the people from Israel, and we're talking about the other 10 tribes, and then you have Judah and you have Benjamin, they come to Rehoboam and said, okay, we want to find out what you're going to do. And we're going to see the attitude and what happened because of Rehoboam's decision. And this is what the people of Israel came and said to him, your father made our yokes grievous. Now therefore make our grievous service to father in his heavy yoke, which he put on us, lighter, and we will serve you. And Rehoboam said unto them, depart 3 days, come again, and the people will depart. And the king consulted with the old men that had stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, how do you advise that I may answer these people? And they spake unto him, saying, if you'll be a servant, now listen, if you will be a servant unto the people this day, and will serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be your servants forever. Now, doesn't this sound like what Moses brought out in Deuteronomy? Getting back to the idea of the king being a servant. However, he forsook the counsel of the old men, which had given him, and consulted with the young men that had grown up with him, and which stood before him. And he said unto them, what counsel do you give, that we may answer this person who has spoken to me, saying, make the yoke with which my father did put upon us lighter? And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, thus shall you speak unto these people, and spake unto thee, saying, my father made our yoke heavy, but make thou lighter unto us. Thou shalt say unto them, my little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. Boy, that's kind of insulting, isn't it? And now, whereas my father did lay you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father has chastised you with whips, but I shall chastise you with scorpions. So the kingdom was divided. Israel never had a king that followed God, and Judah and Benjamin had kings spotty at best. Wrong move. But do you see why the people were upset? Rehoboam promises more of the same, and even worse. He promised to take more money, taxes. The people that